like in the case of New York City, I have a very odd feeling that everybody is going to be fighting one another really soon in the city of Chicago.
Taylor made headlines in 2021 when she went toe-to-toe with then-Mayor Lori Lightfoot during a tense city council meeting. Now the outspoken 20th Ward alderwoman back in the spotlight for recent comments she made critical of Mayor Brandon Johnson during an interview on the Ben Jaworski Show.
We should not be on the fifth floor. And I'm speaking my whole heart. We were not ready because we haven't been in government long enough to know how government really runs.
Taylor was unavailable for a follow-up interview, but her comments were referencing the progressive movement that she and Mayor Johnson have been a part of for years.
I felt like we're not ready, and it's showing out in the wash. I don't got to say it. People see it. We're pretending like now we got the power that'll show you how it's supposed to be done. And we look real stupid right now.
I think the movement and the mayor have some serious concerns here because people are speaking out publicly about some of his shortcomings or about some of the shortcomings of the movement very early in his administration, and that's not a good sign.
Some of Taylor's frustration stemming from the migrant crisis.
Well, obviously, one person is upset with the entire situation that, quite frankly, is actually on their side. But this situation goes back to, how do I say this, to the many videos that I've already done. And, of course, I've called this from the very start that it would continue to get worse and worse and worse, especially once winter started to roar its ugly head. Now, the temperature right now in Chicago, I'm showing you guys the weather report today, and obviously it's going to be a lot worse once you get deeper into December, once you get to January and February. It's probably going to be pretty bad in March, and it's probably going to be pretty bad in early April, and then you're going to have it just kind of feels like maybe next year you're probably going to have a very hot summer. And, of course, you've got the Democratic National Convention. You got a lot of migrants. And, of course, to go on top of this, you've got a lot of people of color who are not exactly happy with the benefits that these migrants are getting from the federal government and even from the state of Illinois. I've done a lot of videos on this, but this situation is getting a lot worse, especially now given the fact that the governor of the state of Illinois has told Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson to find a new location to put these migrants at, as you guys will see here.
Governor Pritzker pulled the plug on the controversial migrant camp in Brighton Park. The governor rejected the city's plan, saying there are too many environmental concerns at the site to proceed.
CBS 2's Tara Molina is live for us in Brighton Park with a closer look at the decision and reaction from the mayor. Tara.
Jim and Marie, there has been back and forth on this state-funded site for nearly 2 months now, and the city had just called it safe before the state stepped in, before the governor's office stepped in. We asked, what's next? Construction on this site started last week, and you can see they made significant progress getting these tents up. City officials telling us over the weekend it was safe to house migrants after releasing an environmental review requiring the removal of contaminated soil. But today, Governor J.B. Pritzker's office said an Illinois Environmental Protection Agency review found, quote, insufficient soil sampling and remediation. They say this site does not meet state cleanup standards for residential use. The plan was to house up to 2,000 migrants here, but it's now unclear where or when a tent camp will be built for migrants who would have been housed here. We heard from Mayor Brandon Johnson and 12th Ward Alderman Julia Ramirez this afternoon.
The plan is consistent with what I've been implementing from the very beginning. Here's the plan: to eliminate police districts as grounds for shelter. That has always been the plan.
And so on one end, we won't have that capacity to support the current crisis. On the other end, throughout this process, there's been many layers that have been red flags, for my office, for constituents here in the ward.
We know the state is working with the Archdiocese of Chicago to identify other possible brick and mortar locations for shelters. We actually touched base with the Archdiocese today. They told us that they're working on finding and securing those locations right now.
If you guys noticed it or not, but I chose not to use WGN. I've talked about this in previous videos that they love to put copyright claims in, even though they removed the copyright provision off of 2 of the videos they put copyright claims in because I won the case. But still, at the same time, I don't feel like going through the nightmare again of having to put those claims in because I know how they're going to do this. They're just going to keep putting them in over and over and over again. Wait a minute. Let me get back on topic rather than talking about copyright claims. Fact of the matter is this here. A lot like the situation, what you're going to see in New York, which that video is going to be coming out at 4 o'clock this afternoon. where New York City Mayor Eric Adams has lost his emergency powers in the city for the most part and it's gone broke. You're seeing the exact same thing going on in the city of Chicago. Now, there have been plans, of course, to get the migrants into other facilities, talk to the archdiocese, talk to the church. And I've already done videos on this before. You're going to overstrain their efforts, and after a while, they're going to get a little upset as well. But now you get this situation where, as I've been saying before, the land, of course, where the facility is set to be built at in Brighton Park, is not exactly safe. People have been protesting, saying this is not a safe location. Of course, people in Chicago have also said, you need to go back, you need to find somewhere else. You shouldn't have came here illegally, which, by the way, a lot of these people did, in fact, vote for these migrants to be here. Whether they want to admit to it or not, they're now, of course, being red-pilled by this. Of course, what's the old saying? The best way you can red-pill a liberal is what? Give them what it is that they want. It's like I used to say about people who claim that they wanted rich people to pay an exorbitant amount of taxes. I would say, okay, well, let's go ahead and raise the tax rate so that way you guys can see that your employer will more than likely lay you off or they will more than likely fire you. And after a while, unemployment, it does, in fact, eventually run out. So therefore, you have to go find another job. And the job that you get is probably a part-time job with a lot less hours and a much, much worse situation. Because then you try to go to get through welfare line and you find out it's way too long. The fact of the matter is this right here. As I just said, the best way to red pill somebody on the left is give them exactly what it is that they want. So that way they can see for themselves that their idea was bad, very bad. But here we go once again. You've got the city of Chicago. You've got the mayor, Brandon Johnson. He is upset because now he has to move or reallocate. This guy is not exactly what we call creative. Look, let me say this really quick before I go any further. To all the viewers who watch my channel from the city of Chicago, you may have already figured this out, but I figured this right here out from day one. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, when she was in charge, she spoke the woke stuff, but at the end of the day, when you got to actually look at the practices of her office, how it was that she wanted to be left alone, how it was that she did not want to be interrupted, the fact that she claimed that her wife, who's actually a man in drag, got to say it a certain way, was not exactly what you call really woke. She was what you call faux woke, to get woke votes. Brandon Johnson, on the other hand, is an actual true believer in the cause, and you guys are seeing that the true believers are, in fact, extremely incompetent. This is the same guy who also said that rioters were doing what they were doing because they were hungry. Even though you got a McDonald's down the road, you've got food places down the road, and then they decided to create food deserts, a socialist-style area to where you can get food. Of course, the food that's coming in there is not exactly the food that you would prefer. You live in a country of great places to eat at, food just about anywhere you can get it. And, of course, I understand people's money situations. You might not be able to eat right away, but, of course, you can go to a fast food joint and still get something, get anything you want, but yet you want to wait in line for something that is obviously low quality. I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but the fact of the matter is this here. These people should have known that this situation was going to get a lot worse, especially given the fact that winter was coming. They obviously did not see this, and they put every other native Chicagoan on the hook, especially taxpayers. Now, I have covered where one suburban community said no to this right here. The migrants are not allowed to be here because they've gotten, let's just say, special treatment, hotel, $7,000 a month. Migrants, of course, are complaining about the conditions, of which I already said in the previous video, and we'll continue to say this over and over again. You did not have to come here. You should have done some research before you decided to do that, and the border, quite frankly, should be closed. But then again, though, you have to understand the level of lunacy that we're dealing with here. You see, the problem with the situation is that Governor J.B. Pritzker, and this right here could be a multitude of things. Number one, he doesn't want to give out the money, probably because the city, quite frankly, can't afford it. The state can't afford it. I mean, the state did issue reparations recently to certain communities, and now they're finding out that their budgets have been strained. But yet recently he wanted illegals. I did a video on this right here talking about the military where he wanted illegals in on the law enforcement aspect, be working for the sheriff's departments, the police departments, all that stuff there. It makes you wonder exactly what these people's priorities are because they're starting to find out that they just don't have the money. Or there could be something else here at play, which I didn't really truly think about, but now I feel bad for not thinking about. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and roll the other side of the coin on this situation with this next clip, and I'll tell you what I think may be really and truly going on, as crazy as it sounds.
The mayor was asked 3 separate times today, and there was no clear answer as to whether the city has another outdoor location in mind for a base camp that could replace Brighton Park. What would be the plan B now that you can't use this site?
Yeah, well, first of all, the mission is still very much alive. I've said from the very beginning, especially as winter is approaching and weather is shifting, is to get people out of police stations.
But now the city is left scrambling to find shelter for up to 2,000 migrants who would have been housed at the base camp in Brighton Park. But with the Illinois EPA declaring that location unsafe, it's not clear where the asylum seekers will go. Instead, the mayor seeming to point the finger of blame at the state.
The state of Illinois knew that this assessment was happening and felt confident enough to continue to build on this site and to go into a contract with World. The state did not provide any additional guidelines or any sort of methodology in which they were requiring us to go by, so we used the standards that were available to us.
The governor, speaking earlier today before the EPA decision was released, suggesting the city could have picked a different place for the base camp.
We don't pick the sites in a city, right? The city has sites that it has made available. This is the one that they had pointed to and wanted to make sure that we focused on. These are for asylum seekers.
For now, the state is moving forward with a shelter for families and those with disabilities at this site in Little Village. Meanwhile, the mayor says the city will continue looking for other locations for brick and mortar shelters and winterized tents, including this plot of land at 115th and Halstead.
As other folks have asked for Plan B, I've been planning for Plan B, C, and D, and F, E, and F from the very moment that I became the mayor of the city of Chicago.
But the mayor did not say what those plans might be. The governor's office said they will work with the city to find an alternate location for that base camp as quickly as possible. But obviously, this is a setback.
Of course, migrants are already complaining. We've already covered this in previous videos. But I want you guys to think about something else, too. You see, one of the reasons why New York City is in the situation that they're in is because they literally went broke. And, of course, the mayor, Eric Adams, is being denied the emergency services, basically saying, look, you don't have any more emergency powers. And, of course, they also mentioned that there was $30 billion that they could maneuver with. But as you guys are seeing, these people are not exactly competent when it comes to budgeting. I want you guys to take a second and imagine the city of Chicago being forced to lay off more officers or cut more police officers, cut more fire department, cut the sanitation department, exactly like New York is doing. I want you guys to imagine for a second that not only does that get cut, but next thing you know, these people start, let's just say they start getting hungry. They don't have the money that, quite frankly, they need. Maybe that's the reason why the food deserts were created. But once again, though, seeing how it is that these people are complaining about their current situation and getting kicked out of police stations and hotels and crap, it makes you wonder if they'll start complaining about the food situation here real soon. I just want you to just think for a second that next year, Democratic National Convention, they run on an extremely woke platform, and you've got a bunch of pissed off Hispanics who were there illegally, and you got a bunch of pissed off black people who were pissed off with the fact that these people were there and pissed off with their leadership. And let me know if this reminds you of another certain event in history. I got to keep bringing it up, 1968 Democratic National Convention. Obviously, I'm just showing you guys a few photos here. I can't really show you the videos because, of course, if I do that, I'll get a copyright claim from the History Channel because they seem to be the only ones who've actually covered that. Don't worry, we'll cover it in detail next year. But the fact of the matter is this right here. The situation looks like a powder keg, and it's about to get a lot worse. And when you factor in the very, very cold winter that is set to hit the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and the country as a whole, especially east of the Mississippi, yeah, it's probably going to get a little bit bad. You guys heard that. All right, you guys have heard that obviously the city, they're not going to be able to find a new location. They're trying to find a new location, which I really find weird. What was it chose Brighton Park? You're basically obstructing everybody's daily lives there. You got people in Chicago, as I've mentioned before, and covered on several occasions. They're not happy with the situation. They want the migrants gone. Some of them, of course, want the migrants in better facilities too, because you will always have the liberal woke types who don't care to do anything except make everybody else's life a living hell, because that's what these people do. They live in some form of misery. Misery loves company, so therefore they're going to forcefully bring people into their own personal misery. But then I got to thinking about it, and I really sat here and thought about this for a second. And I thought about, you know what, this soil, this land of which, by the way, this migrant facility is being built on, it's obviously corroded. Obviously, the city will continue to not approve this. You won't get full approval because the inspectors keep on saying, look, man, we can't build this on this land. People could be exposed to all kinds of diseases. And I've always thought to myself, well, obviously, the city doesn't want a lawsuit someday, so they're probably going to stall on this, try to put these migrants in other places. And, of course, when these migrants get to other places, of course, the people who are caretaken eventually are going to get upset. They're going to get pissed off, and they're going to rail against the state again. But then I thought about it again, and I was like, you know what would be the worst thing in the world is if this situation went full-on national, which I've not seen it do yet. Now, granted, I'm using local Chicago outlets here. But imagine what would happen if this story went national. because after a while, it will go national beyond YouTube. Fox News will pick up on this. They'll cover it. They'll give you the best story they can give you, the best version of it. They may leave some things out, or they may add some things in that may not have actually happened. NBC will get a hold of the situation. They'll try to muddy the waters and try to spin it as a positive. ABC will try to muddy the waters. CBS will try to muddy the waters. And I know what you're thinking. Would you just get to the point already? Well, I am getting to the point. What I'm telling you is that this situation goes national. There's a certain voter base of people that Democrats might not get in 2024. That right there being the environmentalist crowd. Could you imagine that the situation gets so far out of hand that people start getting diseases, they start getting sick, never mind the cold that's coming in, which quite frankly they deny by constantly screaming global warming, even though the weather is, the temperature is dropping lower and lower and lower. The thing is this right here. Could you imagine the backlash that come from the environmentalist types who said, oh my God, you let all these illegals in and they all got sick and they're now dying because the ground was not environmentally friendly? Could you imagine the anger that would come from this crowd? I mean, think about it. And that right there, I think, as crazy as it sounds, is the real reason why it is that they're trying to scramble to find other ways to take care of these people that they want to eventually use as voters. Speaking of voters, you see, the last ace in the hole these people have is the environmental crowd. In reality, it kind of is. A lot of black people who live in Chicago, a lot of black people who are living in New York are saying, look, I think I'm going to sit this one out because of the situation that I voted for. It's obviously made my life a lot worse, but I don't want to vote for the Donald, even though some people of color are. A lot of the Hispanics that are being brought over, they're not exactly allowed to vote. Of course, they'll try to pull some chicanery with these people, but it's pretty obvious that these state laws, which is very, very weird because if you actually look at blue states' voting laws, they pretty much require you to have an ID to go vote. It's very, very weird when they want to point their guns at red states. A lot of hypocrisy. They always accuse you of what they are already guilty of, even though you've not committed the crime or committed the crime yet. It's just the way these people operate. But once again, though, it's politics. Politics, 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 politics. And then they'll turn right back around and spin it as, oh my God, the city of Chicago, they came together to fix this problem. Screw those evil white racists, even though all the people who are protesting are people of color and people who aren't white. Everything is narrative-based. If this story goes national, if it gets out there, this right here will cause an absolute problem for the current administration, and not just in Chicago, not just in Illinois, but definitely for the current Biden administration. And of course, they love to continue to blame Greg Abbott for all their problems. But the thing is this right here. The only thing Greg Abbott did was just simply put them on a bus. The people who got on the bus, they got on the bus of the destination that they were going. And then to go on top of this, the Biden administration approved it. So therefore, the ultimate authority in this situation is the current president of the United States, Joe Biden. But as you guys obviously saw, that there is an alderman out there who is at least calling this out, yet she probably does not know the real truth of the situation here. The idea, of course, was to replace one particular voting bloc with another, eventually grant them citizenship, allow them to join the military, so that way they could create their own little foreign legion, even though it would just end up backfiring. Their goal, of course, was to go against right-wing conservatives, but when you actually look at the crime rates and look at the places where a CW would occur, it looks like it would be a very, very blue facility. So once again, it would just be good old-fashioned blue on blue. Do you guys see how incompetent these people are? Do you see how it is that these people's politics have made them extremely incompetent as people? And of course, the media is going to run cover for them. But of course, the people in Chicago, the people who live in New York, the people who live in these blue cities are starting to see that the reality is not exactly the picture that has been painted to them. Yes, it's starting to look like a bit of a humanitarian crisis, even though they won't call it that. They'll call it Chicago crisis, the migrant crisis, even though you got people right now who are subject to possibly get some form of disease. You've got people who, quite frankly, are subject to possibly long-term effects. And you run the possibility of people out here getting sick from the cold, possibly dying. Wintertime is going to be very, very, and I mean very bad in the city of Chicago this year. A lot of very, very strange weather patterns, especially seeing how it is that El Nino is now on the West Coast and La Nina is actually on the East Coast. I'm not really a weatherman, but I do at least have some basic understanding because, of course, the state that I live in, the weather literally changes every 15 minutes. I'm not lying. I'm not joking. I mean, if you don't like the weather, wait about 15 minutes, it'll change again. That's the truth about living in Eastern North Carolina. And with that right there being said, guys, as you guys can obviously see, the incompetence is absolutely ridiculous. It's stupid. It's insane. And, of course, this insanity is going to lead to a situation that, quite frankly, will eventually make national news. and they're going out of their way to hide the story before it does. But of course, the harder you work to hide something, the more and more and more it gets exposed. With that right there being said, guys, make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sound off in the comment section. I would love to hear what you guys have got to say. Make sure you guys hit the notifications bell so that way you guys are notified when these videos come out. Also, something else too, YouTube will probably try to not let you guys know when the notification is. So I want to go ahead and give you guys a heads up now. There may be a name change. I've been considering going into next year, especially if we start doing more video essays and stuff. The reason why is obviously for search purposes. I'll be updating you guys from now on going forward on the channel itself, whether that's going to happen so that way you guys can know when I'm at. But make sure you guys still hit the notification bell so that way you guys are notified of when my videos come out. And I will see you guys later.